Welcome to Writers Radio. I'm Carol Harmon, your host for Speaking of Family, which features memoir-based poetry by talented Canadian poets Barbara Baydala and Colette Gagnon. Both are working on large projects concerning their families. Trusting we will know them through their work, I have chosen to feature readings by these authors over interview or explanation. Their bios are in the Writers Radio website under Bio. We begin with Barbara Baydala of Ladner, BC, reading A Family of Poems. By way of introduction, Barbara has written, After my father died in 2006, I started writing a journal as part of my grieving process. That was the beginning of my writing journey. Over the past nearly 19 years, I filled dozens of journals and studied and written with many talented teachers and groups of fellow writers. I've recently been contemplating a collection of writings about my father and have realized through assembling these poems for Writers Radio that I can't write about my father without placing the two of us amidst our family in all of its many guises.
Her shoulders so sharply her own, above the black strapless gown in the black and white photo, a formal event in her second year, the year they became a couple, chance meetings in the halls of the chemistry building having done their work. He stands behind her, turned sharply to the right, mugging with a friend, profile in disarray, one hand on her shoulder. She smiles shyly into the camera. He's just told her she has the most beautiful collarbones he's ever seen, the one piece of vanity she holds on to. She keeps the black dress for decades, can still wear it after 5 children to a neighbor's New Year's Eve party. When I take pictures of the melanoma nestled between her collarbones to send to the surgeon, she tells me the story of the photo again, then puts her turtleneck back on. The importance of daily exercise. Every day she gets in her car, drives to his care home, parks, enters the code to the locked back door, takes the back stairs to his room, gets him out of bed, into a sweater, a jacket, a scarf, puts him in his wheelchair, signs him out. She wheels the chair out of the front door, down the driveway, down the block to the park, stops at their usual bench, feels the sun, feels the rain, feels the wind on their faces. She shows him the new leaves on trees, the snow still there in the shadows, the cherry blossoms. Stands him up, takes his arm, walks past the men playing tennis, children on bicycles, a mother and baby. She stops at the top of the little hill, listens to the birds call, laughs at the squirrels. She turns to face him, gives him a longing hug, looks into his blue eyes until she sees him looking back. Year of the Monkey. 16 years since you lay dying, your mind nearly done with remember. My turn at your bedside. I read my Ukrainian alphabet cards. My tentative recitation lulls you to sleep. I stretch your stiff limbs and write instructions for the aides, how to position and grip. I've brought you a stuffed monkey, your zodiac sign. You watch your hands knead and knead it. A whisper on your tongue. I sing, you grimace. I tell you the pureed food reminds me of Mum's whole wheat pudding. A smile glimmers in your pale blue eyes. My favorite story of you and me, how you quit your job to walk me around and around the dining room table, night after night in the Hamilton apartment. I was your firstborn, colicky and inconsolable. My granddaughter has discovered your stuffed monkey, carefully displayed behind glass. Now that she can open the cabinet door, she takes it out, hugs it tightly to her chest. My monkey, she crows, ready for me to chase her around and around the dining room table. Accumulation. Dusting was my job. Every week, every surface, every porcelain knick-knack on my mother's dresser. They were gifts from the women in her hometown when she got married. They looked like tiny bouquets, tiny leaves and petals that collected dust weekly. My brother's job was taking the garbage out. He dragged the cans to the curb in a jumble. I placed each porcelain bouquet back on the dresser precisely where it had sat before. Dusting is still my job. I use a Swiffer, efficiency without precision. We bought the bookcase in Calgary from the same company that made the small chair I sat on as a child. My son used it for years. The weight rack holds his 40 and 50-pound weights. No one lifts them now. The morning light slants across old correspondence and business records headed for the shredder. A lamp with no plug and the vase I inherited from my grandmother. I dust the telescope, the trunk, the guitar half in and half out of its case. Railings and spindles of 4 staircases of 8 steps each. Light fixtures we swore to replace when we bought the house. There's 10-year-old wallpaper paste on the baseboards in the powder room. I only see it when I'm dusting. This strange distance. I have buried somewhere the immediacy of reaction, put myself on hold, navigate the day from rising to retiring, achieve the circumscribed to-dos. Don't rock the boat, though irritation lurks. Fear batters at my heart. When you called to say you had crushed your hand and were headed to emergency, but not to come as they wouldn't let me in, I couldn't decide between watering the garden or sitting on the porch to watch the boys across the street play basketball and hockey and soccer and lacrosse, just the 2 of them in their driveway. She emerges, washed in blood and her mother's cries, round, stone, grey, sculpted, obdurate battering ram, slippery eel, ghostly and closed. The doctor's name is Alice, voice a suggestion, hands deft steel, conductor of the rhythmic breathe, push, catch, roll, suction, a murmur. 5 starburst limbs spread on her mother's belly, slick rush of ocean, whisper of arrival. She's here. She's here. Round the block. I swaddle you and prop you up in a Virage sail car seat, jerry-rigged with a flattened roll of paper towel into a borrowed stroller. This is our first walk together. I sense your mother's anxious emanations across the blocks that separate us. I rehearse in my mind where I'll grab the car seat if it parts company with the stroller. I adjust the top to block the wind and readjust it so I can see you. We bump over curbs and wobble round corners. You stare at me unblinking, fall asleep. The wind plays across your forehead, lifts one eyebrow, then the other, picks up a flock of snow geese and throws them, raucous and disorganized, overhead. You call out in a dream. The geese reform, draw mountains and rivers in the sky. Between. Little blonde boy clutching pumpkin art, orange squares precisely placed. Won't post it on my fridge. It's for Mama. Brown-eyed girl blowing raspberries, calling us all poopy butts, which we have agreed to ignore. In a battle of wills, I fear we will lose. Great-grandmother scaring me every morning when her phone rings and rings, because, of course, she doesn't put her ears in until after she brushes her teeth and gets dressed.
Vancouver poet Colette Gagnon writes of a family tragedy. The fate of her younger brother Phil, killed in a confrontation with police in 1974, reflects our inadequacy in the face of mental illness and drug addiction, as individuals, family members, community, law enforcement agencies, and society at large. In Colette's words, she revisits her memoir-based poetry, further exploring the use of form. This suite of 5 poems centers around the grief and loss of her brother Phil, and includes an excerpt from a childhood narrative entitled Lure. Thematically, these are haunted voices of dream, reverie, elegy, foretelling.
leaving. How to leave a floating world in a boatload of silver, who escapes the hinge of birth and exile, an island adrift amid harborless archipelagos. In rivers of flight, gyres of uprooted limbs, vertigos of wave decay. Drop us to hands and knees, our unborn daughters, sons, generations in white dust. Remember through our skins, the dead can dream us. Do not look behind me. This universe does not exist. Where are my people? The following excerpt is from a poem called Lure. The roof blows off, the story begins. This once upon a time makes weather. Things come alive, a deer comes to die. Coyote runs laughing out of the woods. Run, the lion cries. The story begins. Everything as usual starts in the kitchen. Papa lifts the boy, mon beau petit-fils, praising him up, chants a fishing trip anthem. 3.5 and tall as the fridge handle, big enough to handle the rod, the bait, the boat, the lake, the night in the tent and the howl of wolves. Cheers fill the kitchen. The boy will go fishing. Forecast, overcast. Let the line run on. Green waves slap the gunwale, cast and overcast. Papa wraps an arm around and around. Green weeds sway underwater, haunted with fish, sluice shark, jackfish, muskellunge, pike. The jig and minnow slow trolls above weeds, ticks the sway, snaps the rod tip, rips free. Hang tight, hang tight. The lure surges, flutters, triggers strike. Bravo, mon gars. Ruffle the boy's hair, his sudden joy. Haul up the line, the hook, the old pike's grin. The smell of wood smoke and bread fried in bacon, a cup of cocoa, Uncle Theo's pipe, shivery teeth and knees, pea blows sideways, leaves rustling overhead, magpie listens in, hear coyotes in the distance. Yawning and yawning, voices dwindling, a boy fighting sleep. All night the lake is awake, lapping, lapping. In its dream, the old pike pulls you under. In its nest, underwater, eyes cold and pale as glass, watching, watching. This poem is a glosa based on Cesar Vallejo's Black Stone on a White Stone. Black Friday, 1974. I will die in Calgary on a bitter day, on a day I'll be remembered by those who have forgotten me. I will die in Calgary, no backing down. maybe a Friday before Christmas, the shortest day of the year. It will be a Friday with a pocket full of glue tubes, a gun in each hand. I have put my mind on backwards, words freezing in midair. Can't you hear what they are saying? Life goes on without me as I make my way alone. I always have, and never so alone as on this miserable Friday, no road ahead. Colette Gagnon is dead. He died long ago in Calgary, outside his room in a garage on a Friday before Christmas, shouting, "Come and get me," firing sawed-off shotguns, sniffing glue. The witnesses were tear gas, TV cameras, the Calgary police force, a borrowed army tank, a furnace pit bunker, and blood-soaked, bullet-littered snow. Voices in his head urging him to run across the line of fire. He was shot down hard, tit for tat, for 7 men injured and 1 detective dead. He was mental, the mother said. She saw him dying on TV. He said he had no family. Everyone beat him down. The voices said that he was wronged. Why not avenge that hell? But a devil's bargain is delusion. He killed us all. He was mourned, and though not unremembered, his grave remains unmarked save by a tree. What heralds Christmas from light years away? A black star on a bitter day, waiting to implode, then be forgotten. Vigil for October 25th. So what do we sing in the night? A luminous juju? Eternal stars droning, black notes descending. We're all still asleep at 2 a.m. You keep coming back to see if I'm alive. Here, knuckle my heart. Trailing all those what ifs, my 72 birthdays, and maybe the point of a cake on fire is to say, forgive me, I don't remember crying. Your sawed-off guns blasting the week before Christmas to smithereens. Look at me. Is it bitter in Alberta in December? You don't have to answer. Today you'd be 70, my brother. Forgive me this life, this long-lived vigil in the dark fire. This last poem is a cento. Seance. The dead do not cease in the grave, but we are minor kingdoms of salt and heat. And so a deer becomes venison. In every house there is at least one girl with eyes of fire. In my dream you are alive again. I was 5. You offered me your almost toothless smile. What are dreams for, you asked me. I bury my dead a second time, the trees walking toward us.
You have been listening to Barbara Baydala and Colette Gagnon reading poems from works in progress which commemorate and explore family relationships and the incidents and memories which bind us together and also haunt us. Thanks for listening. Writers Radio is produced by Ingrid Rose and Carol Harmon, editorial, and Gary Sill, audio, original music, and technical support. Our programs are available as podcasts at writersradio.ca or wherever you get your podcasts.
You have been listening to Writers Radio, a non-commercial collaborative project which presents talented writers reading their own work. These stories, essays, and conversations revisit the long tradition of oral storytelling that connects us to the inspiration behind the words. Be sure to check the website, writersradio.ca, to subscribe to our free notifications list. It's also a way of letting the writers know you are there and appreciating their creative work.
Writers Radio broadcasts from Half Moon Bay on the Sunshine Coast in Canada, traditional tribal land of the Sechelt Nation of the Coast Salish peoples. We express our gratitude for their wisdom teachings and land stewardship.